Hello and welcome to another SonicLAB. Today we're looking at the Roland Verselab MV-1, which is a kind of new format for the Zen Core engine. We've seen this with the MC-101, the MC-707, which myself and Gaz reviewed, and we thought it was pretty fine actually. Similar capabilities into this in the fact that it's got the Zen Core engine with 128 voices, it's got sampling, it's got save to SD card, it's got effects, it's got sequencing, all of those kind of things. The idea with this really is that it provides a kind of start to end songwriting and completion. You can even master to the end of it. It's got 8 tracks, all of which are Zen Core capable. The first 4 tracks can be tones or drum kit sounds, and a tone, they are actually labelled to say kick, snare, hat, but actually in this project I've got a piano, I've got a symphonic sound, there's a hi-hat on there, but there's a drum kit on here. Then you've got these melodic tracks, which again could be a drum track. They're just labelled this way, I think really to kind of help people who perhaps aren't familiar with this kind of thing to get started. Then the difference in these 2 tracks can also be looper tracks. Now on the MC-707 you could have multiple looper tracks, but you can only have 2 looper tracks on this, and you get the same memory restrictions, which are I think 60 seconds maximum. Then we have this vocal track, which as you can see you can't use yet. Now the vocal track is really interesting because what it enables you to do is record much longer phrases. You've got I think it's 700 plus seconds in mono and 380 something in stereo. So you can record these, but only after you've created your sequences, which if you think of a sequence like a sort of beat or a sketch, which can be up to 8 bars long and have all the tracks apart from the vocal track. Then we put those into sections, which we can have, say, repeat. So if we've got a 1 bar section, we can have it repeat for 8 bars. If it's 8 bars, we can have it play for 8 bars or less. Then we kind of arrange those into songs. So we would say, like in this instance, I've got this song, or if I go to record mode, you can see that these sections are playing through my 6 sections of the song, which is, if I take it out of record, actually quite a nice dark thing. There's a nice piano sound in here. But what we can do here then is we can record vocal tracks over this arrangement. And yeah, it is a bit weird because you've got all that sample time available, but you can't access it until you're in a song mode. That's just the way they've gone for it. And most of the demos you'll see have been sort of geared around rap and R&B, those sort of things, which kind of allow you to put down vocals, because when you're in vocal mode, you can record multiple clips. You've got up to 16 slots, and they can be placed anywhere along the arrangement's timeline or recorded at those points if you like. And then you can actually replay them, but you can play them together. So you could have a stack of backing vocals or a vocal double, which you only want to bring in for certain things. So it's actually quite flexible and quite clever in that way. So I'm not going to do a full feature-by-feature review of this. Luke Pop has already beaten me to that, and he's done a really great job. I'm going to just sort of see how it is to work with and what those sample limitations are like, where we can go with this. So let's get stuck in. So everything starts with the sequence. This is the workflow, sequence, section, song, mixer. So the sequence, think of this as an individual clip. So this would be up to 128 steps, which could be 8 bars, depending on how you've got the step length set. That records on 7 tracks. Obviously, we can't use the vocal track. Each of the tracks is a tone track. So, for instance, my kick track, in this instance, is not a kick. I've set it to be a piano, and the piano can be played chromatically on these pads. We've got octave shift up and down if we need to. We can also set it to a scale, so it quantizes to a scale. We've also got a chord mode, which we can set however we want. Press edit, we can set the root note and then the other 2 of the triad if we want it that way. We've also got a, if we come out of there, we've also got a style mode, which is kind of like a repeat. It's probably more applicable to the drum track. So if I went to here, then go to style, I've got these different sort of trigger amounts, and I guess I can probably, can I edit these? Not quite sure. It doesn't follow the same routine, which is another one of the little quirks. So exit out of here, So for instance, yeah, well, let's go to the drum tracks. We go back to notes. We've got a real-time record, and we've also got a kind of TR style. So that's my snare, 2 and 4, TR style sample play, or note placement, and that's all well and good. Right, one thing about the pad sensitivity, they actually feel pretty good, but I have to say, out of the box, that was not the case. You have to go to System, and I changed the pad curve to logarithmic, the pad threshold I took right down because I was getting some missed triggers, and the pad trigger sensitivity to 12, and now it all seems to work actually quite nicely. But back to my kick track, I've got this phono piano. I'm using an external keyboard for this because I don't really want to play it with pads. It's a really nice sound, actually. More on the sounds. There are 3,000 of the Zen Core sounds in here, and we can browse by preset, by project. We can bring in WAV files and sound files because they can play back on these tracks as well. So we'll come back out of here. We've got limited amount of programmability on these, so I press edit and enter, and that gets me to the tone settings. And we've got there's a list of probably about 20 parameters, and it's it's good for basic sound shifting, but it's not really the full length, the full depth that you get. So for instance, if you were using the MC707, that's got a bigger screen and we can get right in there. It is possible to write your own sounds and edit your own sounds. You need Zen Core Pro, which is part of the Roland Cloud, which is a paid service, which gives you access to all of that kind of Zen Core sounds, and you can load your own patches in here. But the basic stuff is quite basic. Exit. One thing I will say about playing, on the 707, they had this auto select, which when you press the track, the external MIDI would be routed through to that track. That's not happening here, so I have to change MIDI channels on my unit, and then I'm playing the sound that's not selected. In this case, it's this one is symphonique, which again is on the snare track, but it doesn't really matter where they are. The sounds themselves are quite good. If I go to my bass sound, it's got quite a nice bit of girth to it, and that's because, as well as the basic parameters, we've got the ability to, now if I do this right, we've got the tone browser, tone setting, and then multi-effects. Each track has a multi-effects setting, and on the bass on this track it's a bass boost, so I'll turn that off. Turn it on. We've got a few parameters for that, low boost, but we've got a whole bunch of insert effects effectively on here, which are all the kind of, there's some great stuff in here, and we can actually have some quite big shaping. In addition, there is a multi-effects for the main outputs, as well as, if I hit a reverb and a delay, which are common, which you do on sends. The effects are actually pretty good. I'm using in this sound, I've got a bit of delay, well, a lot of delay, and a lot of reverb, which is an SRV model. It's quite a nice sound. We don't get any of the kind of shimmers or any of that stuff. It's not quite at that level, but certainly good enough. So the next section of the workflow is sections. Now, sections are effectively the repeatings of patterns, or length of trigger for a pattern. My patterns are mostly 8 bars, so I've got them set, apart from this one, which is a turnaround, which is just a 2-bar version. But I could effectively set that to be 7 bars and then have a little fill pattern on the end, which I would then arrange in my song. In this instance, I've just got 6 basic patterns. I'll just play what I've got here. So this is just a really nice kind of dark sort of pattern that I came up with, yeah, it's not hip hop and it's not house. It's just, I thought I'd do something quite long and languid to sort of see how much we would be limited by sampling times. A bit more about the sequence recording, which I didn't mention. We've also got the ability to record motion into here. So I can record 3 tracks of motion, and these are assigned to parameters. Say, for instance, if I go to my kick sound, I've got it set to cut off, release, but I can assign this one. I press edit, and then it allows me to essentially assign most of the voice parameters, if not all of them, which I could then have hands-on control of, and also which I can then record into the motion sequence, which is recorded into the clip. So anyway, back to sections, then back to song. So here we are with song. One other thing that's very cool about the kit, if I come back to my sequence section, we'll go to the kit sound. I can choose, let's go to a basic section here, go back to my kit. Got my sounds, which I can edit. I press shift and edit, then I can edit those individual sounds to a certain degree. We've got the kind of offset, which is an offset of the master settings. Little bit clunky, but it's the Roland way. But we can also sample directly into the kit, which means that we could very easily create, you know, hybrid kits. We can also load our own sounds into these or other sounds. Like, for instance, I've got this sound, which is a sample from the Typhon, as is this. So these are... So I've recorded those with effects and stereo. Recording is very simple. We go to our input section and we can set our record source to be an external input. In this case, I could be using line or the mic. The mic will work nicely for that. Or we can record from individual tracks, outputs, or the mix output, so we can sort of bounce down into that. I'll set that up now and you can have a look. Right, so I've got the Typhon up. It's going into the stereo input. It's really simple to record. Right, so now I go shift record. I'm in standby mode because I've got it set to trigger, because I don't want to be editing sample start and end points with this sort of display. It's a bit of a nightmare. And you press go. Hit set and ready to standby. Now, if I just go to my synth, right, so I had 60 seconds there because I've got nothing really much else in memory. You just do that. You press there and then you go, yeah, I've got that. Come out of here, so now I can just put that in wherever I want it. So here we go, it's going to start on the B1. Really simple to bring in kits and samples. The only thing that you've got to worry about is if you're using looper tracks, at this tempo, they can fill up the time for ages. So I had 60 seconds available there, but if I was using looper tracks, I might have almost nothing left. And that's a little bit frustrating because, shift utility, we can actually remove samples in there, but the looper samples don't show up. In that sample management thing, for some reason, it just doesn't work that way. And that's why I was scratching my head for ages going, oh, why have I only got 2 seconds to record this sound into that? And it's because the looper was doing 6 bars at 70 BPM, which was, you know, almost a minute. And this, I have to say, this is one of the things that is quite frustrating about this. There are all these little sort of like, why does it do that? I don't understand. It's not absolutely finessed and polished, I would say, in terms of OS and UI. It's just, it's a little bit clunky, and I found that a little bit frustrating as I've been going on. But anyway, that part, putting a sample into a kit, really easy, really nice and straightforward. We've done that. It's easy peasy. So to set up a looper trap, I'm going to use instrument 2. We'll go from the scratch. I'll just clear that track. Now I need to set the track as to what sort of track it's going to be. So I can have a tone track, a drum kit track, or a looper track. So yes, now I have a looper track with an empty clip available on it as well. I'm not going to record it into this section. Let's go to one of my other sequences, which is this one, which is just sort of empty, and I quite like that. So what I've got is, let me just find a sound on my Typhon, and we'll play that in there. I've found a sound here, so now I'm just going to basically set the length of the clip that I want to record. And again, it's in a weird place. We have to go into input settings where we can set up all the other things. I don't know why you wouldn't put it in edit instrument, but it says, look, not available for looper track, which is, why would you do that? That's weird. So let's see if we can get 6 bars. We should have enough. So we come out of here, empty clip. Now I'm just going to hit record. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my 6 bars. And that will cycle nicely over that, and it will sort of make it seem longer because it'll overlap the different bars. Basically, that's it. That's my looper track. I can have up to 2 looper tracks, obviously, which we've seen here. So once I've recorded that looper track in there, there's not an awful lot of much I can do. In fact, bizarrely, you have to go into a section select mode, then hit edit, and then hit the looper settings, and then we can set the multi-effects and perhaps the looper settings, which are the chromatic, the things to do with the pitch shifting and whether it's in reverse mode. But now I've done that, I can go into song mode because I've created my arrangement. We can get onto the vocal track, which means we can get into some long form sampling and use that other area of the memory. So I'm going to come back to the Typhon again, and I'm going to record some just sort of random synth noodlings over these areas in the clip. So I'm going to start at bar 1, hit record, ready, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, I'm just going to do 4 bars there, and now we can see that when I press play, that's playing there. Now I can trigger these across other sections as well, which is actually kind of cool because it means that I've taken that part, that's already fixed in space. But what I could do is I can go to bar 5. I'll just give myself a bit of pre-roll, so I'm rewinding to, and I'm just going to go into record 3, 4, and I'm re-triggering it. So now I've got a second vocal take which starts at bar 5. So if I hit edit, take sequence, take edit sequence, I've got my first one goes to there, and I've got another one starting at 4. So those are my 2 vocal triggers. The first one I originally recorded, and then the second one that I played in. Come out of record. So that's actually pretty cool. Let's try and record something into another clip. So I'm going to put that into maybe this section. Let's see what we can put in here. Let's find a sound. Yeah, I want a bit of that harmonic stuff going on in here, so I'm just going to record a clip into here on this section. Going on there. Now I'm not entirely sure why that is, because I've got plenty of memory going on. I think maybe it's because my volatile memory, the looper memory, that 60 seconds is very close to full up. So it's a bit of an errant message that I'm not quite sure why that was. But anyway, we're coming back here. I've got that clip recorded in there, and so maybe what I'll do is can I actually take sample edit? I might turn that one down a little bit because that's a little bit loud. So That one's at full, so we've got granular control over some of the parameters here. Like output assigns and start and end points, which again, you really do not want to be editing into sort of multiple thousands of samples via these little rotary coders. I do believe that there is some editing available via a new update for the Zen Core beats, which allows you to kind of have more of a graphical representation, which is great because editing sample, that's like old S900 territory, and good goodness, that's like 40 years ago we were doing that. Don't need to be doing that now. Right, so I've got my two sections here. And that's all cool. And remember, I can build all of these up and I can trigger them in. What would be really cool is if I could do this kind of thing and record the note durations as well. As it stands, when you hit a trigger point, it's like starting a playlist and it just goes, start playing the sample here to the end. If there was a mode where we could actually have the note length duration in there so that we could run in that way, that would be really useful because it would give us some more creative, because if we had backing vocals that were doing a big phrase, I don't know, no 19, we could go na 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 na, you know, excuse my singing, but that would be really useful as an extra creative tool, but you can't do that at the moment. Maybe they'll fix it or change something in the firmware to do that, and I don't really think that's what it's for. Remember, the idea with this is really to play your vocal tracks over your final arrangement, and then this is on your way down to the final mix down, which we'll get onto. So I'm just going to record a couple more parts in here. Oh. And now I'm ready to think about mastering. Now, mastering, the mix down allows us to basically record a full mix. So whatever we've got in our song arrangement, record it down to a WAV file through mastering effects, or we can record the instruments, which is effectively an instrumental, which is the backing tracks minus the vocal tracks. But remember, this is also a fully featured audio interface, and we can bring those tracks out in discrete form. There's a USB driver that works in class compliant mode, which is generic, which will just give you a stereo out. But if you use the Roland driver, you can access the individual stems of those tracks, which is actually kind of cool if you're bringing that into another workflow, into your DAW and creating even more stuff. So we'll just take a look at the mastering effects. We press Shift and Mastering, and we've got a bunch of things, multi-compressor. I mean, there are a ton of parameters in here, and to be honest, I wouldn't want to go anywhere near this. Editing it this way, this is just not the way that you want to be setting up your mastering effects. And then you've got final limiter with switch. I'm just going to leave them as it's, so I'll use those default settings and see what happens. So then if I want to set my mix down, just want to double check what I'm actually doing. I'm just going to go for a full mix. Then I just press go, and it's literally off we go. It's now recording all the things that I've done to a WAV file. I can leave you with that running while I talk over this. Verselab is undoubtedly a very powerful piece of equipment. The problem I've got with it, actually you can hear it's made this a lot louder. The problem I've got with it is it's actually quite complicated to use. And while it's aimed at beginners, I'm not a beginner and I found it quite difficult to learn. Maybe it's because I'm expecting all these things to be normal, and in a way, if I was coming at this fresh, the amount of capabilities it's got are really very impressive. And yes, you can do a full piece from start to finish, including vocals. I didn't really get into the vocal processing because I'm not a vocalist. Like I say, check out Loop Hop's video for a much more granular look. I think that's nearly right. It just feels like the operating system is just a tad obscure, and in some ways it's harder to use than just using a regular DAW, but it's not a DAW, and you've got all of that stuff in the box. Plus, we could quite easily be using this to create play-out track, so I could use the vocal takes to record bunches of stereo sections up to 16 and just have those playing out and then use it as a sound generator. There are lots of ways that this can be used, so I wouldn't write it off because I'm finding it a little bit complicated. I think it's just not a simple piece of equipment. For the price, it's pretty impressive, and you get a lot of bang for the buck, but you will need to spend some time working on it. Anyway, that is the Roland Verselab MV-1. Thanks very much for watching. I'll leave you with the play out.